Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a pretty fundamental question about the human heart. Why is it that when we lose someone, sometimes it leads to healing, and other times, it leads to a kind of self-destruction?
To get to the bottom of this, we're going to turn to Sigmund Freud's landmark 1917 essay. He was really wrestling with this exact puzzle. Why can grief, something we all go through, look so radically different from one person to the next? One way is healthy, and the other is just deeply self-destructive.
So Freud kicks things off by comparing two very distinct reactions to loss. On one hand, you've got mourning, a process we're all pretty familiar with. But on the other, there's this more mysterious and, frankly, more painful state he called melancholia, which, today we might recognize as a form of severe depression.
Now, take a look. On the surface, they seem almost identical, right? There's that profound sadness, a total loss of interest in the outside world, this inability to love. But, and this is the key, look at that last line. In mourning, your self-esteem, it's still there. In melancholia, though, Freud saw this extraordinary lowering of self-regard. This is the whole puzzle right here. Why does one person grieve while another person starts to hate themselves?
Okay, so first, let's break down the normal way of grieving. For Freud, this wasn't some passive state you just fall into. No, he saw it as an active, difficult process he actually called the work of mourning.
To get what he means by work, we have to understand a core Freudian idea, libido. Now forget how we use that word today. For Freud, libido was basically our psychic and emotional energy. It's this finite resource we have, and when we love someone, we invest a huge amount of it in them. We're literally binding ourselves to them with this energy.
So mourning is the tough but absolutely necessary job of facing reality. First, the mind has to accept that the person is really gone. Then comes the hard part. Memory by memory, you have to painfully pull back all of that energy you invested. It's a slow, agonizing process, and that's why grief hurts so much. But once all that energy is reclaimed, the ego, your sense of self, is finally free to go out and invest in life again.
And here's the crucial point about all this. In mourning, the person grieving understands the losses out there, in the world. The world feels empty because something precious was taken from it. But the self is still whole.
But in melancholia, the script is completely flipped. The whole psychological machine just goes haywire, and all that pain, it turns inward.
And this just lays the contrast out so clearly. In mourning, it's the world that has become poor and empty. In melancholia, it is the ego itself, your very sense of who you are, that feels poor and empty. The source of the pain isn't seen as an external loss anymore, but as some kind of deep internal failing.
This goes way beyond just being sad. This is a relentless, brutal storm of self-abuse, of self-blame, and this feeling of just profound moral failure. The person is completely consumed with self-hatred. And what's crazy is, a lot of the time, they have no conscious idea why they feel this way.
And this is the exact puzzle Freud wanted to solve. See, in mourning, you know exactly who and what you've lost. But in melancholia, the loss is often fuzzier. Maybe it wasn't a death. Maybe it was a bad breakup or a major disillusionment or losing some kind of ideal you had. The person knows who is gone, but they can't quite put their finger on what it is about that person that has caused this complete internal devastation.
So how does this actually happen? How does grief literally transform into such vicious self-hatred? Well, Freud's explanation is both really elegant and incredibly powerful.
The key that unlocks the entire mystery comes down to a single, powerful, and very human emotion: ambivalence. Freud basically argued that almost none of our important relationships are pure love. They're almost always a complicated mix of love and hate, or at the very least, love mixed with frustration and anger.
This is Freud's beautiful, almost poetic description of the mechanism. What he suggested was that when a relationship that's full of this strong ambivalence ends, the whole process of letting go just gets stuck. You can't just withdraw your loving energy because all that hate and anger is getting in the way.
And right here, this is the core of Freud's entire theory. It's the big aha moment. All those vicious, relentless self-attacks, they aren't actually aimed at the self at all. They are really the anger, the reproaches, and the disappointments that were once felt toward the person who was lost, and now they've just been turned inward.
So instead of letting the lost person go, the ego does something truly remarkable. It identifies with them. It pulls them inside itself. It's like the ego is saying, I can't bear to lose you, so I will become you.
But here's the catch. By doing that, it also imports the entire complicated, ambivalent relationship. All the anger that used to be directed outward is now turned inward, and the ego starts attacking the part of itself that now represents that lost loved one.
But Freud's theory had one more surprising twist. He realized this exact same mechanism could explain not just the absolute depths of depression, but its polar opposite, that wild, high-energy state of mania.
He suggested that if melancholia is like a brutal civil war inside the ego, with the ego constantly battling the ghost of this lost person, then mania is the wild celebration that breaks out when that war is finally won. I mean, just think of all the psychic energy that was being consumed by that internal battle. When the ego finally wins, when it finally defeats and casts out that internalized person, all of that pent-up energy is suddenly liberated. It has nowhere to go, so it just erupts, creating that triumphant, boundless, and often reckless state of a manic episode.
This chart really helps visualize the whole spectrum. At the very bottom, you've got melancholia, where your psychic energy is just at rock bottom, totally consumed by that internal fight. In the middle, you have mourning. That's the hard work of slowly freeing up that energy. And then way up at the top, you've got mania, the explosive release of energy once the ego is finally free. They're all just different stages in the ego's ongoing struggle with loss.
So in the end, Freud's essay gives us so much more than just a theory of grief. It's really this profound story about how love, hate, and loss are all tangled up together. He created this powerful narrative for how the pain of losing someone can curdle into the poison of self-hatred. And while psychoanalysis has obviously evolved, this core idea that sometimes depression really is anger turned inward, it continues to influence how we think about mental health, and it leaves us with a really critical question for today.